Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds, Council Skies, album review. Let's chat about it. Hey friends, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning, here tonight to chat about this new album from Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds. You know Noel Gallagher, he is one half of the legendary Gallagher brothers that made up Oasis in the 90s and early 2000s before their breakup. And for those of you who don't know, Oasis is probably one of my top 5 favorite bands of all time. I'm a big fan of just so much of their output. And as far as Noel and Liam's solo stuff, I've usually been more lenient than others, especially since Noel has put together his High Flying Birds project. I mean, when their debut album came out, I saw a lot of negative reviews on this thing, and I'm gonna be honest, I actually really loved this album. I really loved a lot of it. It took some really weird musical risks. It almost had like a post-Britpop sound to it that was pretty desolate at times, and I thought it was pretty cool. So much so that I definitely wanted to stick around and see what they did next. And a few years later, they followed up with Chasing Yesterday. Now, this was an album that I had a lot more harsh thoughts on, to say the very least. I mean, I did think some of the singles were great, and a lot of the album I still do enjoy casually, especially tracks like In the Heat of the Moment. I think it's a great single for the band. But overall, this was a much more straightforward album. This did not sound to me like Noel Gallagher trying something new with his new band. No, this kind of just sounded like, very cookie cutter post Oasis Noel Gallagher, which was fine. But I wanted to see a lot more, and going into their next album, I definitely had my guard up there. Who Built the Moon album, and this was an album that caught me off guard for a couple of different reasons. One, sonically, this was the band's most diverse and truly out there project yet. I mean, there were elements of psychedelic rock and progressive rock, the soundscapes on this thing, and the atmospheres, and almost every instrumental you really didn't know what you were going to hear. It was actually pretty exciting, much more exciting than I thought it was going to be. And while the songwriting kind of leveled it out for me, I was still very impressed with what they were doing, much more than most. Now, leading up to this new album, it's certainly been a while, and I mean, I don't want to be that guy, but I mean, it's been a while since we've heard from the High Flying Birds, and they've put out some real crap EPs since the release of Who Built the Moon a few years ago, and I've been kind of hesitant with this album, and it's kind of why this album is a day or two late, because it definitely took me a little bit longer to take in, mostly because I thought the singles leading up to this thing were easily the most mixed bag of singles that we've gotten from Noel since he started this project. So that being said, let's chat about this. This album starts off with I'm Not Giving Up Tonight, and honestly, I think it's a great start. Clearly, I still have a very strong soft spot for the band. It's got that stripped down, sort of bluesy throwback riff, and all around, I feel like the performances on this track are pretty commendable. Like, seriously, his vocal performance, it is really passionate and heartfelt. I got nothing bad to say about it, and everything from the strings to the gospel choir behind Noel. Honestly, this is a really commendable track. Open the door and see what you find. This is just, I don't know, this is just a track that easily, just like instantaneous, like was a love for me. This is the kind of track that I just go gaga for from them. It's once again a sort of very classy, heartfelt throwback with some very passionate performances once again. And you may argue that this is a little straightforward, but I think it's done really classy. It takes me back to a simpler time, and it's done really well. I mean, yeah, like I said, you can argue that this is straightforward, but for me, this is home. I feel like when their sound is done right, it's done so right. And of all the ballads here, I think Easy Now is the one that easily does just the most effective work all around. I love how sweet and tender this is, and even though Noel's, lyrics just aren't as up to snuff as I appreciate it, this track is done so tenderly that I'm able to overlook it. His melodies, the chorus, it is gorgeous. It is so full of life. The backing vocals continue to be really tasteful, and that guitar solo too, really nice touch. And yeah, you can argue that this is totally me, being biased towards that classic Britpop sound, and to an extent, you're right, but by the end of this track, I'm belting out every chorus the time it rolls around. And this album's title track, Council Skies, this is just the kind of track that I wish we got a little bit more of, to the point where it's just so frustrating. I love how upbeat and carefree this track is, and as far as just a textured, deep, atmospheric track, look no further than this. Colorful as well. This track just does wonders all around for the High Flying Birds. It's just such a great moment of creativity for the band, and Noel just sounds at his most confident and comfortable. It sounds like a mission statement for the band. It's so colorful, it's super ambitious, it's beautiful. But I am also very slowly, probably too slowly, running out of excuses entirely for the band. I mean, take for example Pretty Boy. This was actually a single, and I just have to ask myself, what happened here? I mean, hearing this track's upbeat, energetic start definitely turned my head. I could definitely have used a little bit more of that on this album, but man, things fall apart so quickly here, and all eyes are on the songwriting, which has always been, to an extent, Noel's downfall, but on tracks like this, it's hard to watch. And you know what? Sometimes he can really cover it up with a passionate performance or an interesting instrumental, but here, this is not the case. It is 5 minutes of pure torture, and I genuinely think it's the worst track here. Dead to the World also really let me down as a single. It's not like Noel can't do a stripped down ballad that's full of heart. Check out some other tracks on here, or check out every ballad he ever performed for Oasis. They're some of the best tunes. But this is so limp and so soulless, and the problem is also, this track has an unbelievably lush, just beautiful atmosphere with just this unbelievable backdrop of strings that I really love. I mean, truthfully, this track would have been a lot better as just a one and done, super quick instrumental. It would have actually been a lot more effective, because once Noel pops in, his performance is, boy, it's not good. We also get Trying to Find a World That's Been and Gone Part 1. This is really not much better. I mean, I don't want to be that guy, but this is just another ballad that has nothing going for it. And this time around, this instrumental is just about as, I don't know, interesting as boiling water. I mean, Who Built the Moon was not a perfect album, but at least they were taking some big risks there. And most of them, while maybe not perfect, made for a compelling listen. This track just does nothing for me. Yes, it sounds pleasant from a distance. It sounds very quaint and sweet, but there is like nothing going on underneath. And with There She Blows, I'm finding even more issues with the album. Weird new issues that I've never really faced before. As this album goes on, the bad tracks that are the band at their worst are really starting to blend together, which is something that I've never had to deal with from the band. This sounds like every other ballad here. This album, and if anything, at its worst, is definitely one-dimensional. I mean, I wasn't expecting anything too bold, but like, come on, this album has been in production forever. And because I need to be even more frustrated with this album, the band actually saves probably 3 of the best tracks for last. Like Love Is a Rich Man. This absolutely saves the album for me. And I hate to be that guy, but this track has a little energy, has a little oomph to it. There's a great catchy riff here, and it makes for wonders. This is a joyous, sort of rootsy track with good vibes all around, and my God, when that chorus rolls around, it is magic. Like, it's not that hard to do. When they're on, they are so freaking on. This is the sound right here. And you can argue it is simple, it is straightforward, but it is instantaneous, catchy, and really memorable. Think of a Number honestly does a lot for me, actually. More than I expected, even though lyrically there are some pretty cringy one-liners. That opening line, try and guess a number and I'll guess your name, whatever. That was rough. But instrumentally, this track picks up all the slack with easily one of the most mysterious and mystique-filled instrumentals here. It's the kind of risk I wish I heard more of. This is the total package. This sounds like a modern comeback Oasis single that just went all the way and just nailed it. And we're gonna get there in the end. I mean, once again, this is a great track, and it's frustrating that they pulled out all this great material for the final leg. This is a triumphant and full of heart track that is just so sweet on the ears. I mean, yeah, once again, this sounds like a really great Oasis B-side. Like, think of like the Master Plan. I mean, God, obviously I've come into this album with more complaints than usual, and it's probably not their best work. I think their last album was a lot better. I still think the self-titled's a lot better. But even when I'm having these issues, I still can't help but have a very strong soft spot for the band, whether it be nostalgia or just who I am. When this band, Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds, are on, they can make some real serious magic. I just wish that the ballads here were sharpened up and they maybe take a few more risks. I mean, this album has been in production, like I said, it's been like a really long time since we've heard from the Birds. But honestly, like, clearly I've got, a lot more issues than usual, but I do still think that there's enough really great material here to, give this a listen if this is something that piques your interest. I'm feeling a very, very, very light 7 on this album, but let me know what you all think down below. If you liked the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, friends.